Trump thinks that he is. And in fact, yesterday on this program, never forget this, because this worked out so well. Snerdley, I forget how it came up, but Snerdley asked me, you don't really think, what was your question about North Korea and China? You were of the, oh, that's right. Snerdley says, aren't you worried about World War III, well, what the Norks are doing and the Chi-Coms are their allies? And I said, no. No, not at all, because at the end of the day, the Chi-Coms are not going to be the allies of the North Koreans. They're going to be our allies against the North Koreans. It's not going to be the Chi-Coms are not. We owe them too much money, number one. They make all of our iPhones, number two. There is no way that the Chi-Coms are going to trade us for the North Koreans. If anybody does anything, it's going to be the Chi-Coms warning the Norks to dial it back or else. And you know what happened? At 6 o'clock, I'm at home. I'm minding my own business. And I said, okay, it's time to get back into show prep. And I find a story that's published at Zero Hedge. And it's about just that the Chi-Coms have not quite delivered an ultimatum, but they sent a message to the North Koreans. If you guys don't tamp this down and stop this, you can forget about any help from us. And we will resort to measures previously unused in dealing with you. I know what it was. A friend of mine sent me that story. And the subject line was, wow, who would ever believe this? And I looked at it and I said, damn, I just predicted this 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. So I got hold of Coco at the website, and I made it a just in from Rush, and we linked to the segment we discussed yesterday. So in this case, you have the Chi-Coms after what Trump called a successful phone call with the Chi-Com leader, and after a successful meeting here at Mar-a-Lago with the Chi-Com leader, we have now the appearances, anyway, of a new alliance between the Chi-Coms and us, with the Norks left out. And my instincts were yesterday that this was going to this was going to be how it eventuated anyway. There's an ideological tie between the Norks and the Chi-Coms, and that's communism. But believe me, the Chinese, I don't have it exactly as I said it yesterday, but the Chinese are not going to risk everything that they have done, succeeded in economic progress, military might. They're going to risk all of that in siding with the North Koreans over us. In fact, they're going to do everything they can to make sure the North Koreans don't do anything but keep missing. Now we've got stories that the Norks have sarin-tipped missiles that they're ready to fire. The South Koreans, the Norks have been launching all these missiles, and the South Koreans have been going out there in the ocean and retrieving as much of the material from the rockets. You know what they're finding? They're finding guidance systems made in the United States in North Korean rockets. I wonder how many of you are going to remember this. Do any of you remember the name of a program of a company from the Clinton years called Loral Space? Anybody remember that name? You probably, some of you might remember, but you probably don't remember what it was. I'll explain to you. The Chi-Coms, during the Clinton era, were having trouble achieving orbit, geosynchronous orbit, with some of their satellites. And that meant they were having guidance problems with their ICBMs. The Clintons needed something out of the Chi-Coms, so they got hold of the guy that ran Loral Space. He's a huge Democrat donor. And they sent people from Loral Space over to Beijing to examine used missile parts from failed Chinese launches and shared with them guidance and other technology to help the Chinese be able to keep satellites in geosynchronous orb and help them with their guidance. Well, it turns out if we do that, you know, the Chi-Coms are going to share some of that with the Norks. We're talking about the 1990s now. And so the South Koreans have found evidence of American technology in North Korean missile guidance. It has to come from Loral. It doesn't have to. I mean, the Chi-Coms may have, in the interim, developed their own, but it certainly was true in the 90s that Loral Space, Democrat donor, I remember when it happened, we couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe that the Clintons were sending an American company over there In fact, it involved the State Department, Ron Brown or something. I remember the controversy about this. It involved turning the project here over to the State Department rather than Commerce. That's what it was. The Clintons turned this over to the State Department, putting it under the umbrella of diplomacy rather than the Commerce Department to do this, because Commerce Department had rules against sharing this kind of technology with enemies. But the State Department, no such rules apparently, so that's what it was. On this North Korea Chi-Com thing, have the Chi-Coms even told the North Koreans, do not think Trump is bluffing here. He's not bluffing. Do not even think of entertaining the idea that he's bluffing. Do you think the Chi-Coms would have ever told the Norks anything like that about Obama? You think they would ever said, hey, you got to take this guy seriously. He's not bluffing. There is no way. I mean, to me, this is a major, major development. If you're in the middle of forging an alliance with the Chi-Coms because the immediate threat, forget what happened during the campaign. The immediate threat is these lunatics in North Korea are launching missiles. They don't know how to aim them, but they're trying to, and they're potentially dangerous. And Trump's on record as saying, "You better not. You're gonna regret doing it." He backs up what he says. He's formed an alliance with the Chi-Coms on this particular instance. So why would he run around? Everything he does is a negotiation. Why would he undercut himself by continuing to accuse them of currency manipulation when he needs them for something here? Everything with Trump is a negotiation, and it's based on what's happening now and what he wants now. Bashar al-Assad in Syria says that the chemical attack didn't happen. 100% fabrication. It didn't happen, and he didn't do it. Somebody claiming it happened to make him look bad, but he didn't do it. He would never gas his own people. The president is saying that U.S.-Russia relations are at an all-time low, while the president is praising the Chi-Com president, Xi Jinping, for his helpful efforts with the North Koreans. The president then followed by saying, hey, all this stuff with the Russians is going to work out. I'm confident it's going to work out. Don't worry about it. Right now, we kind of got problems, but they're going to work out. Now, this story that I was emailed last night around 6 o'clock, China warns North Korea situation has hit tipping point, threatens never-before-seen measures. This is the Chi-Com threatening the Norks. After warnings yesterday and on the heels of a very good call with President Trump, China has escalated its threats to North Korea over its nuclear tests. In another Global Times op-ed, China warns, quote, if the North makes another provocative move this month, the Chinese society will be willing to adopt severe restrictive measures that have never been seen before. It's from an editorial in the military-focused Global Times. It's a Chi-Com tabloid. It's owned and operated by the Chi-Coms themselves. So it's a Chi-Com Communist Party newspaper, and they're threatening the Norks in it. They said that the Norks' nuclear activities must not jeopardize northeastern China, and that if the North impacts China with its illicit nuclear tests through either nuclear leakage or nuclear pollution, then the Chi-Coms will respond with force. The editorial may also have been written by Xi Jinping. This is the bottom line for China. Should it be crossed, China will employ all means available, including the military, to strike back at the North Koreans. That's never happened, folks. We have never seen anything like this. And yes, I, your beloved host, essentially predicted this during yesterday's program. This news cleared about 5:30, 6 p.m. last night. And there is no question that it is the result of whatever meetings, relationships have occurred and been formed between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. I should say Xi Jinping, the Chi-Com Grand Poobah. None of this was predictable. There isn't a political wizard at a think tank on earth that would have ever predicted this. And especially if they had relied on Trump's campaign rhetoric. On the campaign trail, Trump just was merciless going after the Chi-Coms for their unfair trade practices and their currency manipulation. Got their attention, didn't he? You know, the one thing I have learned, it's not a matter of learning, one thing I've observed over the course of many years is that in Washington, and I think it's even true of the Bush administration, although he was considered to be a cowboy, but there's really not a whole lot of tough talk that's come out of Washington around, particularly in the last 8 years, there hasn't been any tough. The toughest talk that came out of Washington was aimed by Obama and his regime at conservatives. Then the next level of toughest talk was aimed by Obama at our international allies. The softest and most friendly rhetoric coming from Obama was aimed at people we've always considered our enemies. The Iranians, the Russians, and so forth. There really hasn't been any tough talk. There hasn't been anybody trying to stand up for the United States as a superpower, representing the United States as a superpower, assuming the attitude that the leader is leading a superpower. We've been in this deference mode. We've been in this feeling guilty over ourselves mode. We've been behaving like we need to excuse ourselves for being so powerful, and that we're going to do something about it. We're going to limit our power. We're not going to use our power because we've done it so poorly and we've mismanaged it so badly. We've been very, very mean with all of our power, which was the message from the Obama administration. Now here comes Donald Trump, who doesn't function in the world where all of these experts are trying to analyze him.